and welcome to Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts, that's namely me, Rory Duncan.
And me, Christina Richmond. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. Welcome to a new year of Cyber Sidekicks, Rory. And we are at episode
50. Yeah, that's right. A synchronized 50 there from both of us. Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's a year of podcasting we've done. This is the 50th episode.
We missed two. I think the first week of the year last year we missed.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine.
Once we started,
Right. And then we took a break. We took 1 week break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But 50, I think that's a great goal.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, to you as well. And it's generated a lot of really interesting chats and conversations. It's been great to meet so many new people and also to kind of reacquaint ourselves with some folk that we've known for quite a while. We had some really interesting guests. There was some quite interesting news stories. We saw the emergence of all sorts of different trends and information that we didn't really know about before. Mm-hmm. Things like the whole progress of AI agents and so on was really quite amazing.
God, that came onto the scene suddenly, didn't it? It's everywhere and everyone knows about it.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for your support. And we've seen a real increase in listeners during the year. It's kind of gone up and up and up and up, which is great to see. And we hope everybody who's listening has enjoyed that in the last year and would like to continue to listen. We'd very much like to hear from you about the kind of things you'd like to hear from us, things you liked, perhaps things you didn't like, and so on.
Absolutely. And if you're just joining us, or even if you're not just joining us, there are a couple of things that we could point you to at the end of 2025. Mm-hmm. One was a predictions podcast where we go through our 4 predictions. We've also put a blog out on richmondadvisorygroup.com with our predictions. And the other is our 2025 wrap-up, what we learned, what we talked about with folks, what was standing out to us as interesting. So if you're just getting started with us, perhaps go back to episodes 48 and 49, just to see what we talked about in 2025 and what our predictions are for 2026.
Yep, indeed. And I'll put the links to them in the show notes so that you can kind of click on them and get to them very easily. Yeah, so
nice.
So what else? What have we got on this week then, Christina, for the new year?
Well, we're going to start out with the news, as we usually do. We've got a bunch of interesting news bits and bombs that you've pulled up and are interesting to chat through. And then we have a lovely guest named James Rice. He is the VP of Product Marketing at Protegrity, which is known for data security, data governance.
Yes.
So very timely, right? Because I think this is the year of, it's been the year of identity and data for quite a while, but data is even more critical as we go into the AI security age. Mm-hmm. So it'll be nice to chat with him.
Let's do some news stories then, Christina.
Okay. Where should we start?
Well, how about the report we've had on Security Week, where 2 US cybersecurity pros have pleaded guilty over ransomware attacks? Now, when I sent this to you, you were like, "Oh no, Holy Mary, Mother of God, etc." Because it,
it sounds like me.
Here are 2 of our own, basically, who are doing these kind of things. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I've calmed down with my holy Mother of God comment. And for folks who know me, I'm more secular than religious. And so I hope I don't insult anyone with that. But I was really shocked. And I think that's what I was trying to convey. We don't need our own people doing this, right? We have enough with nation state actors. We have enough with cyber criminals. We don't need this 36-year-old Kevin Martin from Texas. And yes, I am naming him because he has been identified. The other one is unnamed. And they both were employed as ransomware negotiators at the threat intelligence and incident responder firm Digital Mint.
Mm-hmm.
Shame on them, shame on them. And then the third suspect, and I'm naming him as well, 40-year-old Ryan Goldberg from Georgia, worked as an IR manager at Signia.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really disappointed when I hear things like this, because, you and I are in trusted communities with people who have integrity and help each other and are on a mission to improve our world, essentially. I mean, it really does come down to our security as individuals and nations. And these three jokers are just in it for the money. So shame on them.
What about one of the things I kind of thought of afterwards, because obviously these are individuals who've done this, but they are employed at companies that are, their reputation is based on the services that they can offer. I would hate to think how it's going to affect these firms like Digital Mint and this other one, Signia. I mean, I don't really know those companies, but presumably what on earth are they going to do to try to kind of reassure customers after this?
I don't know. It's really a shame. And I don't want to pin it on them because it can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
I hope that what has happened to many companies, brands after breaches, that they too can pick themselves up and dust themselves off.
Yeah.
I do hope that they will strengthen their HR processes. Could they have known? Could they have weeded these three men out in these two different companies? I don't know. But maybe they'll go to incredible lengths now to try to not do this again.
I mean, we don't know we don't know how long they've worked at these different companies for. Maybe they'd been there for a while, in which case, perhaps they were trusted. But as it is, just to kind of a quick summary of what happened, folks, that the suspects were Black Cat ransomware affiliates, and they paid 20% of the ransoms they received from victims to the administrators of the ransomware operation in exchange for access to the malware itself, the file encrypting malware, and the platform designed for managing extortion. So, they are now in the system, and, I'm sure the full force of the Department of Justice will be down on them. So that was very disappointing.
And they made $1.2 million in Bitcoin from one victim, just one, and they paid that 20% to Black Cat. So this does talk about ransomware as a service. There's a platform, for God's sake. There's a platform on which you can manage your ransomware.
Yeah, I know. It's becoming very, very well organized and operationalized in that regard.
Yeah. There is, by the way, a $10 million reward out for key members of the Black Cat ransomware group. So for those of you who would like to make money in an honest, positive way, if you can find anyone associated with Black Cat, you might be able to garner $10 million.
Gosh.
So there you go.
I wonder if I could maybe sell my Black Cat for $10 million.
Not Smudge.
Don't
sell Smudge.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, well. Nice
try.
Shall we
go on to the next one? Let's go on to the next bit of news.
So here's something, an interesting one, because we were talking about this towards the end of last year, and the topic of cyber insurers and cyber insurance came up as we discussed the challenges of cyber attacks and which companies had cyber insurance and which ones didn't, what level of insurance they had or not, etc., etc. So it appears this is something from Dark Reading that I thought was worth looking at. What did you think of this story then?
It's a little, opinion alert. It's a little ho-hum. I mean, yes, it's everything we know. I guess, the author, nothing against this contributing writer. He did a good job. But it's stuff we know. Use role-based access controls, just to protect your permissions. Think about using zero trust, making sure that, you're doing your MFAs and whatnot. So that's a little ho-hum in my opinion. I do like that he said, look, guys, get away or move away from your legacy technologies, because things don't work the way they used to work, right?
Yeah.
So I understand that. And he does give a shout out for MDR. Yes, I think MDR is a good one to have in place if you can't manage your own EDR, your endpoint detection and response capabilities. And certainly an MDR provider will give you more monitoring and triage than if you have a small team. But it just kind of felt like same old to me, to be honest. What did you think?
I agree. I think what caught my attention was the disparity or the changes in, let's say, claims caused by third-party outages versus claims for phishing. So the Resilience's 2025 Cyber Risk Report pointed out that cyber insurance claims, as I mentioned, caused by third-party outages had declined quite significantly to only about 13%, not quite halved, but certainly less. Whereas on the flip side, the cost of claims for phishing had skyrocketed. So, had gone up to about 49% from 19%. So we're seeing some changes there. There are some changes in the dynamic and where the access is occurring and what the effects are.
So would you say that? So I missed that. To be honest with you, I thought it was kind of a caption to the chart that they have, and I saw the point of failure, and I went, yeah, phishing's up, and okay. I missed that, the third-party line. And so thank you for calling that out, Rory, because to me, how I read that, and maybe you read it differently, but I read it as if you have a service provider, and you're entrusting your network to them, such as an MDR provider, an MSSP, someone like that, that their outages have gone down 13% because they've tightened up all of their technologies to protect you. Is that how you're reading it, or am I getting it completely wrong?
Well, no. I think we don't know, maybe at the end of the day, if the service providers have done that. It's obviously a good explanation, which the article doesn't really go into, but it seems to suggest that the cause of the failure or the risk or the breach involved has become less of an issue with third parties. If we think about 2025 and a lot of the attacks and the points of entry or ingress came from somewhere on the supply chain, for instance, typically.
Right.
That's from the company itself, as opposed to necessarily the service provider. So it may well be that the service providers have realized, hang on, this is core to the service we're offering. Being more transparent and trustworthy about breaches, having the capability to provide a service that is more dependable, that is less vulnerable, is extremely important for our business. Therefore, perhaps the service they're offering has increased. Or perhaps the cyber insurers have cracked down to say, well, look, we can provide cover for you internally, but if it's through a third party, maybe the coverage is becoming much more strict in terms of who qualifies. It could be either or.
It could. But it is an interesting data point, and one that does point to the benefit of working with service providers for whatever reason, either reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also points out the impact that cyber insurance has on the vendor and the service provider. And so we all know that cyber insurance has gotten in there, just like with our healthcare, and told our providers what they can do and can't do, and can prescribe and can't prescribe. So it's an interesting article. Thank you for the nuance on that. I appreciate that.
Sure. The third story was actually again, we always try to start off the show without talking too much about AI and AI agents. However, here we are. And this was because Palo Alto Networks Chief Security Intel Officer Wendy Whitmore, who I believe that you know or you have spoken with in the past.
We've talked several times,
has said that AI agents represent the new insider threat to companies in 2026. And of course, that shouldn't be a shocker to many people. And of course, we talked about this and we wrote about it in our end of year review and, looking forward to 2026. But of course, Wendy points out it poses many challenges to executives who are tasked with securing the expected surge in autonomous agents. So we have these agents doing stuff on our behalf, great, but what are they doing? How are they doing it? And what kind of level of autonomy are they being given? Christina?
Yeah, we did write about it. It was almost like, well, it was very corroborative to Wendy's blog. I think we're all thinking the same thing. It's always interesting when we put something out as analysts from all of the conversations that we've had throughout the year, and then we hear the same things resonating back to us from other blogs, other predictions, other people's viewpoint. To me, it adds critical mass. It means that we're all thinking of the same things. And that just substantiates and corroborates, I think, what we were predicting. So I went into her blog, the 6 predictions for the AI economy, and I thought there was some things that we hadn't really talked about as much, although we did talk about this last year. Threat of AI identity and those non-human identities we talked about quite a bit with Rosario Mastrogiacomo. We talked with him about it. We talked with many others about NHI. So that was an interesting piece in her blog. The new insider threat, I think we've sort of tangentially talked about, and I would love to have her on to talk more about that piece. But the one that I found most interesting, Rory, was solving the data trust problem in her third prediction. I loved it because she really makes it clear that security teams must have observability as well as securability.
Okay.
Because the two teams that have been looking at the data, people who understand the data, developers and data scientists, and those people who secure the infrastructure, right, the CISO's team, they're in very different worlds.
Right.
And that separation creates a blind spot. And we will see in 2026 a lot more data poisoning. So she's saying that if companies can harness the observability and security of those two groups and bring them together to sing kumbaya. She doesn't say that. I think she thinks that it would really be something very beneficial for 2026 organizations. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's interesting because as the complexity of security and related technologies increases, it uses an awful lot more types of roles within organizations. And the more people that are involved, the more roles are involved, the more difficult it is inherently to kind of get them all working together and figure out who's doing what. I certainly saw her call for that is mirrors in many ways the way that cloud rapidly developed. And we had a situation where there was a call to have these COEs, or Cloud Center of Excellence, where you would have an architect or a kind of a visionary manager or communicator facilitator who would bring all these different teams together from across the business, regardless of their responsibilities, with the objective to, innovate and maximize the use and the development of cloud technologies within the organization and the supply chain, etc. Same thing could be done for security, right? I have a security center of excellence, and it's different from the security operations center, right? It's it takes into account the line of business, product teams, marketing, sales, IT, the security teams, the CISOs, etc., with the objective of holistically providing, a secure environment for the whole organization. I think that's good. That's probably some of the things that she's talking about in her blog.
Yeah, she's very smart. I would love to have more chats with her. She also calls out, some GRC, governance, risk, and compliance stuff, which I thought was interesting, that AI is driving a lot of legal accountability. She talked about quantum, which we also talked about. But the last thing that I'll mention, and I would point people to her blog, I think it's a good one, the new connection, the browser as the novel workspace. And we had several conversations about this last year. We talked to Simon from Seaside about this. that was interesting, right? Looking at the client side and how, you've got to be protecting the browser in different ways than you used to protect it. TK Chianini from DNS Filter, we talked about the DNS filtering that needs to occur. Alex Holland was talking about the session cookie hijacking. So we had some interesting chats about the browser being one of the new attack vectors. I mean, everything new is from the old days. Everything old is new again, if you will.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a good blog, and I appreciated the article that was written about it. And take a listen or go, read it, folks. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and the last story for this week is quite an important one, Christina. So we're not allowed to talk about AI slop anymore, apparently. Yes, indeed.
We have to change the way
How do we talk about it? And this is according
AI.
to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. Well, apparently we're not allowed to talk about it. We just must accept the fact that we're moving on to a new phase in AI, and it's kind of there already.
But this by the boss of Copilot.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't resonate for me. Does it resonate for you?
No. And it doesn't really resonate with other people. I've been following some of the furore online where there was either it was sort of not necessarily leaked or perhaps it was misconstrued, but it appeared as if Microsoft Office was going to be renamed, Microsoft Copilot Collaborative version or something like along those lines. Maybe it was a typo or something, but people seemed to think that Office was going to be renamed as Copilot. And of course, everybody piled on to say, why are you still shoving this down our throats? I think the fact is that, Satya has to flog the heck out of Copilot because they invested so heavily in it. They invested vast sums and therefore they have to kind of follow it through. But his view is to try and sort of provide this vision of what's beyond. So we've got, humans being empowered by tools and agents and, deploying resources to that. His view is that, very strong view, is that we've moved past the initial phase of discovery and are entering a phase of widespread diffusion. Well, maybe widespread confusion. I don't know. But I think, like any technology, people don't move en masse. They move over time. Some move quickly, some move slowly, some don't move at all. And it's exactly the same with things like cloud or security, whatever. People are all different stages of adoption, depending on the approach that they take, the strategy or what's needed or not. There's certainly people who are still, let's say, standardizing on technologies before they even look at virtualization, before they even look at, cloud services and so on. And generally people have hybrid environments. They're not all going, 100% in on something all the time. So, what I picked out from this was the fact that Pew Research said that 62% of US adults say they interact with AI at least several times a week. They say that it's kind of a work in progress, though, for Copilot and other AI services in terms of paying. So we may have 62% of US adults interacting, but is that with the free stuff, or is it interacting with one of the services they've paid for themselves, or is it something free as a bundle that they've had with their company corporate software? It could be any and all of those things. What do you think, Christina?
Yeah, I think you've called out most of the key points in this article, why Mr. Nadella needed to write something like this. There's a lot of investment. But I think also one of the things I would add would be counteracting some of the belief that Microsoft is going to lay off more people due to AI. And there's a couple of things that I looked at around this. So they did lay off 15,000 people in 2025. They did cite freeing up money, essentially. Their strategic shift to prioritize AI investment and efficiency. It wasn't a one-for-one of we're laying these people off in order to have AI do their job. We've seen companies do that. And we've also seen those companies jump back in and say, oops, wait, we need those people back. But those 15,000 jobs were to free up AI investment. So that's number one. But the perception is, AI is taking my job. The other thing is they did a study, which I thought was pretty interesting, around, it was a 2025 research study analyzing 200,000 real world conversations, real world, I'm putting my own air quotes around, with Copilot AI to identify which occupations have the highest overlap with AI. And the study identified 40 jobs with high AI applicability, meaning they're most exposed to disruption. Knowledge work. We're doomed, Rory.
Yeah, that's right. Technology analyst was at the top of that list, probably.
Communication and research. We're doomed.
Yeah.
Sales and service, I thought, was another one. Sales representatives, customer service reps, telemarketers, technical roles as well. Data scientists, of course, and web developers, of course. So those are the ones that are most at risk. And then there was one more thing that I uncovered, and this was in this month, so just in the last few days. There have been rumors circulating that Microsoft might lay off another 11,000 to 22,000 employees. However, their chief comms guy, Frank Shaw, explicitly denied these reports, calling them 100% made up, speculative, and wrong. So we'll see what happens this year. I mean, I certainly want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think both to the point that they've made huge investments in Copilot, as you've said, and they have to make it work, right? And he needs to change the conversation. That's number one. And to the point that there is this perception, reality or not, we don't know yet, that AI is replacing jobs and that Microsoft has laid off a lot of people. He needed to write something like this. So I guess we should give him a hats off just for writing something. Do I agree with his viewpoint? Not so much.
Yeah, I think we'll see how things unfold in the coming weeks, folks. When it requires the comms head to deny something that is being rumored and reported in multiple places, it's quite a serious attempt to kind of gain control of the story and to set things right again. And I don't think it's sort of malicious looking or malicious speculation. I think it's, to your point, it's based on what happened before. What happened before could happen again. Companies are citing investments in AI and the more productivity gains that can be made by reducing costs. So if they did it before, well, why not? They should do it again. That seems to be the logical argument. So we shall see what happens. And
we will.
Informed. Yeah, great. Thanks, Christina.
Yeah, thank you.
So this week's special guest is James Rice, and he's the VP for Product Marketing and Strategy at Protegrity. Hi, James. How are you? Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Rory. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah. And Christina's here as well. We're both quite keen to have a chat with you and see how things are going.
Hey, James. I'm so glad that we could, book you on the podcast after having the briefing with you back in October. So thanks for spending some time with us. I really want to sort of dive right in, if it's okay with you. We always ask everybody, what keeps you up at night? And there's so many interesting answers. So I'm just going to toss that softball to you.
Oh, no, I love it. I appreciate the softball to get us started because, it's interesting. What really keeps me up at night is that organizations are introducing entirely new data interaction models, really faster than our current security approaches are evolving to keep up with them. And, I hate to be the one to have to say AI first, but AI doesn't just access data. It reasons over it, transforms it, memorizes it, recombines it in ways that we didn't really design traditional security controls to be able to handle. And at the same time, there's really a fundamental tension inside every organization. Security teams are trying to reduce risk by limiting exposure, but data and
Mm-hmm.
AI teams are under pressure to use more data to drive more value. And so those opposing forces are acting on the same data. And figuring out how to balance those is quite frankly the holy grail. And what really worries me is it's not just about new attack surfaces. It's also the unintended leakage. You talk about cases where no one's trying to steal anything. There is no bad actor. You just have
Right.
models that are memorizing sensitive information, or training processes that can leak data, or outputs that unintentionally reveal protected contents. And that's really all without a malicious actor even trying to do anything nefarious. And that's the moment we're in. And that's really what keeps me up at night.
Well, that's a big one, and you jumped right in, and I really appreciate it because, honestly, I think it's keeping a lot of folks up at night. We were talking about a news story this morning as we were recording, and we were looking at some of the predictions out there on data observability versus securability. And it sounds like you've just sort of nailed that in a nutshell. We need to be able to bring the teams together, those using the data scientists, the developers, the AI folks using the data. We need to somehow sing kumbaya between them and the security professionals, because the horse is out of the barn. We can't say no to the usage of the data, but we have to figure out a way to get those two forces in alignment. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And I think that's really one of the biggest challenges that organizations have, because both sides are right. You have a security
Mm-hmm.
team that has compliance concerns and data sovereignty concerns and all of the traditional concerns that we know are risks to our data. And then you
Yep.
have your data and AI teams bringing a new risk in when it comes to AI, because they're being challenged by the leaders in their organization to show value from these new data interaction models. And oftentimes those two things just butt heads. And I really think it's also, though, because if we think about the traditional approaches of security, they tend to just surround data with security. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean that in a bad way. I've been in
Right.
security all my life, and I know security is a defense in depth strategy. But when it comes to things like perimeters or infrastructure protection or identity and access checks, those just
They don't do it.
security approaches of the past don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily address the new data interaction models of the future.
So, is there a new way to interact with the data inside? Is there a way for us to be the observer? Is there a way to secure?
There really is. And the observability is such an interesting point, because observability is important too. But the problem with just observability is that it's kind of like saying where there's smoke, there's fire, but hiding the
Yep.
fire extinguisher under the cabinet closet.
Right.
And you got to give somebody something to do with it as well. And one of the
Mm.
things that we're really seeing when it comes to data is there's two types of controls. You want to think about embedded controls that actually change and transform the data itself. This is everything from the masking that we know and love, to
Mm-hmm.
tokenization, to format preserving encryption, to anonymization, to synthetic data. There's all these different capabilities that allow you to embed protection directly in the data, so that that data can flow more freely around your organization. But then when you introduce AI, you also have to think about semantic control as well.
Hmm.
And are these things on topic? Are there prompt injections I'm looking at? Is this customer service agent being asked things outside of its realm of expertise that shouldn't be asked?
Well, that's a hard nut to crack, I think. That semantic aspect, I think, would be really difficult because it's changing all the time. Isn't that a problem?
No, I was just going to say, I think you're spot on. And the problem for semantic is that you really have this need to look at all of the interactions that are happening between users, data, and AI. And And being able to do that in a way that is not necessarily blacklist approach, because if you're
Mm.
trying to say, oh, stop these type of bad actors or bad attacks, you're always going to be behind. And so what we're actually seeing is more of this whitelist type approach where you're looking at, I use that customer service example. Let's train our customer service agent on what good interactions with it look like. And anything outside of those good interactions that we expect people to be asking, well, those should be ignored because they could be off topic. And so there's also this sort of discussion of how do you approach this from a blacklist, whitelist type perspective. And we're seeing that whitelists tend to be something that really gets the models or the agents trained on what good behavior looks like and allows them to model that, no pun intended.
Well, what's interesting about that is it's kind of the watchers watching the watchers, right? It's the AI agents being trained to watch themselves and to watch other agents on how they're interacting with the customer, the user. And it's something that Rory and I have talked about quite a bit is, well, who watches the watchers? Watching the watchers. We could go down that rabbit hole many times. But I think we've entered a new era of the machine being trained to do things at a much faster pace and scale than humans could have and are capable of. And yet we have to make sure we're training the models to know what good is, to your point, that whitelisting.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've seen at some customers that's really interesting too, to your point, how can you leverage AI to also make sure that it's accurate, it's not hallucinating? So you ask a question, you get an answer. We all know the standard chat type discussions you can have with AI. But what happens with if AI were to take that answer before it shows it back to you and then tries to regenerate the question? And then it asks other AI models, can they regenerate the question from the answer that was produced? And if you can't get back to the original question, then your answer may not be accurate. And so really looking at like LLM as a judge type concepts are really interesting. But to your point, I would say AI is a zero trust conversation. We shouldn't be
Mm,
trusting AI. We're trying to put the controls and guardrails around it so that we can feel confident, have trust in the accuracy and the responses that we're getting. And doing that, again, goes back to me to those embedded and semantic controls. Because if I'm
mm,
embedding protection into the data, I'm making sure my AI knows more. It gets more access to data. So that's great, but it's getting access to data in the way that we want it to. So it's only seeing exactly what we want them to see. And then on the semantic controls, I'm making sure everything's off top, or excuse me, on topic. And so combining those things together is really the way that you kind of watch those watchers, if you will. But I find it
yeah.
interesting that, yeah, there are absolutely techniques for the watchers to watch themselves and be able to give us some insights into, if they think their own answer was actually accurate and on topic.
So where do you think data protection, like the table stakes, the core of data protection is today versus where it's going to be in a couple of years? Have you thought about the future of where we're headed? And I'm sure you have, because you've already said a lot of things that are very future forward. And what are people seeing today? What are they buying today that maybe they're not thinking about for 2 years out? What's going to change, I guess, is my thinking on that.
The core of I think where we are today is we do spend a lot of time thinking about how to surround data with security. And
Yep.
inherent in that, inherent in the infrastructure protection and the data loss prevention and the access control checks, quite honestly, is friction. It's friction for usage of the data because it makes it harder for the business to actually get access to what they need. And in
Right.
fact, there are times where you might see some of those things completely block access that says
Right.
this
It's
data
it's
can't
the
go to that
security.
AI model.
Yeah, it's the security department of no, the usual legacy security department of no. And we're trying to move faster with our new AI usage. So, yeah, I agree with you.
And I would change it now. It needs to be the security department of know, KNOW, right? We need to know
I
what
like it.
is it that this data needs to be used for and how is the business trying to use it? Because ultimately that's going to dictate whether I can anonymize data or tokenize data, or maybe even just use completely synthetic data because I'm trying to, test some non-production environments. There's all of these different controls that can be applied, but it really comes back to knowing the KNOW version of a team of know comes back to knowing what your business wants to do with that data so that we can make the right decisions to support them.
I think that's the quote of the episode, Rory.
Yeah.
That is our quote of the episode.
Yeah.
It's the first quote of the year, James. That's beautiful.
Yes.
The security department of KNOW.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good pivot. Very good pivot.
And I would say it allows a security team too to start thinking about themselves as more of a business value enabler instead of a cost center, instead of the traditional team of no that they've been known for in the past. Because I think security teams want to be in these discussions and want to be business value drivers, and having this capability to really embed protection into the data, apply semantic controls around it, will make you a better partner with your data and AI teams.
I love that. And we've been talking about that forever in security, haven't we? It's like, let's get out of FUD and talk about business enablement. And how do you enable your teams as a security person in the organization? And there's been a lot of different discussion over that.
Yeah, no, that's some really interesting insight, James. And I know, KNOW, that we could continue talking probably for another 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, but we're kind of getting up against time here. James, it's been great to hear from you, and thanks for coming on for the discussion. We appreciate you taking the time. Perhaps you'd like to come back on the show at some point in the future?
Oh, you extend any invitation, and I would be more than happy to come back. I really appreciate, again, you guys bringing me on, and I'm happy to have had the quote of the year, or this. Obviously, we just started the year.
It is. It's the quote of the year, James. You own it.
I'll have to really think of how I can even one up myself next time. Then I guess.
There you go.
Great.
Thanks again, James. Great to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, James. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you both.
Great. Well, that was a really interesting chat with James.
It was. Loved having him on. Just always so fun to learn from new folks. So thank you, James, for coming on to chat with us.
Yeah. That was great. It'd be great to have him on again at some point. And that's probably where we should wrap the show for this week. Yeah. Christina?
Yep. We're
another
probably
long one.
At time, Rory. Yep.
Oh, definitely. Overtime. But that's okay because, we had a break over the Christmas period and we had to kind of catch up a little bit to begin the new year all fresh so that we weren't kind of constantly behind the curve on what's going on. So what's happening next week then, Christina?
Yeah, so we have Sean Dubey coming from Semperis. He's the principal technologist at Semperis, and he was a guest on the show last year. So he's going to be a repeat, which is great. I love it when we have folks on again because we discover new things. We talk about new areas. And usually when we ask someone back, it's because they really are fun to chat with. So I'm looking forward to having Sean on again.
Yeah, it'll be great. He was one of the most interesting of our guests last year. I mean, they all were. All our guests are, but it was really good.
Yeah, you can't have favorite children.
No, you can't have favorite children.
Nope. We love them all.
Okay, well, he was the only one. He was the only
one.
Yeah. Or maybe Sean is the only one who actually wanted to come back on the show. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, let's turn it on its head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or there may have been one that we wouldn't have back on the show, but we won't name names.
Okay. Yeah. Well, exactly. Let's hastily pass that one by. So, folks, thanks again for listening. It'd be great to hear from you about what you're looking forward to for this year in terms of the things we'd like to cover, any feedback you have on some of the stories from this week, and any other suggestions you have. And you can get hold of us a couple of different ways. Probably the easiest would be by email, and you can get hold of Christina at...
Yeah, Christina at richmondadvisorygroup.com and Rory.
Yeah, Rory at richmondadvisorygroup.com. And with that, we'd like to thank you for listening and hope you can join us again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.